Welcome back to the Human Nexus podcast. My name is Andrew Brazis. I am a marketing and business consultant and a private chef.
And my name is Miss Laura Machiste. I am a YouTube Tower reader, holistic massage therapist. And today on this episode, we are talking about astrology. So, in terms of astrology in my life, I am a Pisces sun. I was born on March 13th, not on Friday the 13th, but I have had my birthday fall on those days. And I didn't really know much about astrology while I was growing up. I did read the little horoscopes in the back of the magazines, and sometimes they would be pretty spot on. And I just thought it was coincidental at first when I didn't really know about anything. And as being a Pisces sun, when you don't really know about stuff, you're just like looking up your sun sign. So I would look up Pisces and the psychic abilities and like the weird things that happened to them resonated, but with the personality archetype, I didn't really feel like it resonated like as much as how I feel. And whenever I would meet people, they wouldn't guess that I was a Pisces. I always got Leo or Aries that people thought I was. And then I realized that we had birth charts. So when I put in my information and put in my birth time, date, and all of that stuff, there you go. I'm an Aries rising and a Leo moon. So that was what really got me to be like, okay, this makes sense. Now I'm going to get into astrology.
How young were you when you got into it?
I think I was still in high school. So I would say like about like 15, 16 years old. My
Mhm.
mom, she subscribes to Star magazine. And so all my life, I would just read the
I
little
have no
horoscopes.
idea. I have no idea what that is.
It's just like a random magazine. It's like celebrity stuff. She reads it.
Oh,
I
okay.
wouldn't read
Yeah.
it. I would look at the cover and I would flip all the way to the back to see what the zodiacs were. But once I really got into like the birth chart and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, I can see having an Aries rising and a Leo moon because that's what people always thought I was my whole life. And now it just like makes a whole lot more sense. And going through my chart, getting astrology readings, having people tell me about myself, I was like, okay, wait, how is this possible? How do you know that?
Yeah, I mean they can really be spot on. I'm a Leo sun and a Capricorn moon and a Taurus rising. And
Mm.
I didn't get involved in astrology probably till like the end of high school. So I got involved in tarot first,
Oh,
and then I kind of learned it through tarot because I knew they were kind of connected. Um,
really?
yeah.
Wow, that's
Um,
pretty cool.
and then once I started the tarot stuff and I got into like astrology, I started leaning more into astrology because that just felt, I don't know, more natural almost. But I still like as a Leo sun, I don't, I don't know. I don't really feel it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like I fit super well. But the Capricorn moon for sure, and then the Taurus rising, definitely.
Do
Um,
you feel more grounded and less fiery as a personality?
yeah, 100%. I mean, as I don't know, we've kind of briefly talked about, but I don't have like the performing, I don't know, traits. Like it's not
Right.
something that I just, and that could be, like trauma or whatever, but it's not something that I gravitate towards or feel naturally in, like natural ability in. Yeah.
With your Capricorn moon, are you hard on yourself when you feel like you haven't worked as hard as you should?
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's how I am with in the Leo moon way. Because if our moons rule our emotions,
Hmm.
as a Capricorn moon, you're going to probably get a little bit more emotionally riled up on yourself that has to do with business, work, and things along those lines, or things that don't feel stable for
Yeah.
you. And as a Leo moon, that's where I kind of understood the stereotype of Leo, where everyone's always like, yeah, Leos, 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 they want attention. And I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like Leo suns get attention
Hmm.
and people are envious over that. And that's what kind of gets me back to astrology in the sense of if our whole solar system is following the sun,
That's interesting.
then
Yeah.
right. So obviously
Yeah.
Leos are going to magnify energy first. And I never knew that. And that's when I realized about my Leo moon is that like sometimes when I was growing up, I would walk into a room and like everyone would just be like, "Oh, who's that?" Like
Hmm.
even in a good way or sometimes not so good way.
Yeah.
And I never understood why, but then when I got into astrology and seeing all of that, that's what made a lot of sense to me. So that's interesting that you have the Leo sun and you don't have that aspect to yourself. And do you? Are you someone that gets a lot of attention? Do you feel like that happens to you?
I want to say probably not, but I mean, I do. Yeah, maybe. Sure.
It's
I mean,
not always
it's
good attention, you
yeah,
know?
no, it's hard to answer because I like, especially with social media,
Mm,
like I have like a social media account. I'm not like huge or anything, but I don't know. Like, for example, if somebody sees your stuff, not everybody likes it. So like maybe people are giving me attention that I'm not aware of, that kind of thing.
right.
Um, but I wouldn't say that I'm like pulling in tons of attention.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense because you have a Taurus rising,
Hmm.
and according to like astrology, your rising is how you come off to other people.
Hmm.
So that would make a lot of sense as to why people always thought I was an Aries or a Leo with the fire in the personality that I have. And if that's how we come off to people in our rising, then people were right, most of
Yeah.
my life. Although they
Yeah.
weren't right in the sun sign department, they were right in the rising department. And that makes sense kind of with your Taurus rising, where it's almost like, do you feel more comfortable not like I don't want to say the word seeking out those types of things, but do you feel almost like I feel like a Taurus rising gives me, all right, I'm going to post a video, I'm going to throw my phone across the room, and I feel like like a Leo rising may post a video and like watch it and be like, all
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So no, that's great. So doing anything like the YouTube channel, for example, like I have my
Hmm.
own,
Right.
um, and I really only want to do that for two reasons. One, to get over the fear of being seen,
Mm,
and also to like teach people things about like business and marketing and life and whatever. But
right.
it was never like it was very much okay, I'm posting it and then it's like dead to me. Like whatever
Yeah.
happens, happens.
Hmm.
Um yeah, I'm definitely not like posting and like I don't know.
It's such an interesting dynamic, like a double Earth and a Leo Sun. I feel like that's just like so interesting to me in the sense where do you feel like the Earth takes over more than anything else?
Yeah, I would like if people ask me to describe myself, I would say grounded is like in balance. Like that's usually what I use.
Right.
Um Definitely not fiery. Like nothing on the Leo thing would yeah.
Well, Leo also rules the fifth house. So although the stereotype of what
Hmm.
they say in personality type, do you ever feel like super creative? Because like Leos are in the fifth house of
Yeah. Yeah,
creativity,
I would say
performance,
that.
art. Were you ever in theater class?
No, not performance art, but um, like photography.
There you go.
I got into like locked in on that for quite a while.
Hmm.
Like with food, like getting really creative with food. That's like one of my things.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
yeah. Then we
There you
have,
go.
yeah, we had something.
The
When we
cooking.
did the astrology thing, it was with cooking or like the
Yeah.
guts. Do you
Yes.
remember what this was?
Yes. When we looked into the synastry of both of our
Hmm.
charts, and
Yeah,
my
yeah,
astrologer told me, and mind you, they don't know Andrew.
yeah,
He told me that this man should be doing something that is in the realm of food
yeah,
because I didn't know this, but it seems like as we move throughout life, our chart moves with us, and your sun is now in Virgo, and that rules the digestive system. And then I asked Andrew, I was like, well, you do your cooking thing, and that is something that you're passionate about. So that would like make a lot of sense as to why that was your calling. And you didn't even know that that
Yeah.
happens either.
That's so strange. Like, well, I definitely didn't know that our charts moved. And then I've had like the deep root of being like in culinary my whole life.
Mm.
And I was for 8, 9 years.
So
And then
there's
now
that Leo
recently,
energy.
yeah,
That's where it's figuring out a way to do something in your energy.
mhm,
It may not be the personality, but it seems
yeah,
like what this definitely is.
yeah.
Do you do
Um,
like creative dishes where like they're like, presentationable for art?
yeah, that's more of like what I mean, I like the cooking aspect and the eating aspect, but I think
Right.
like the plating aspect's probably my favorite.
Right.
So
That's
that's
what
like,
would get me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
everyone likes to eat a nice looking plate of food.
yeah. It definitely helps sell for sure.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
So that's really interesting because like I just said before, like I didn't know our charts moved and
yeah,
I didn't
that's
know this.
new to me. Yeah, I had no
So does
idea.
anyone else know this? Did you know that your charts moved, or is this new information to you as well? Because I would love to know that because I didn't know that.
Now, is it just the sun sign or is it like the chart of, as a whole?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Because when I did the reading, he told me that like during my childhood, I transitioned into an Aries sun.
Hmm.
So I don't know if like everything moves at the same rate or if it's just the sun. So
Hmm.
if there's anyone who knows astrology on here, write in the comments what the answer is if you know. So
So
what else
interesting.
is your chart and how
What
have you
else?
seen it play out in your life?
What
Sorry,
else is
did I
in my
cut you off?
chart? No, you're okay. Um, so I don't know a ton about my chart,
Hmm.
unfortunately. I wish I knew more. I mean, I have it here in front of me, but I don't know enough about it to talk about it. But I will say, well, side conversation, I thought my rising was Gemini for
Hmm.
from like the time I was like 18 to like 28.
Right.
And I was like, why doesn't this fit? Like it just never fit. I had my birth time wrong, significantly wrong.
Mm,
Um, and so that was like that period made me, I want to say more heightened about like what was going on, at least like
right.
for me personally, because I was like trying to make my ascending fit into my life and it just
Hmm.
never did. And then once I realized I was a Taurus rising, it kind of like clicked.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Gemini rising, you'd be chatting it up
yeah,
constantly.
which is not no, normally what I do. Um, but outside of that, like I've been looking back as of recently, the last like 4 or 5 years, once I've been like really getting into this and seeing how just connections have happened or patterns have happened in my life.
Hmm.
Um, and not just patterns in my life, but like seeing events play out around me for myself and then like asking people like what's going on in their life and then seeing that they're having similar issues. Like for example, last what was it? Our last eclipse, like in the spring,
Yeah.
I um had multiple people who were having transportation issues. Like
Mm.
two of them specifically. One's a well, both are friends, but I work with in different capacities, and they both had their transmission explode, like within
Wow.
2 or 3 days of each other of the eclipse, which was just an odd thing to
Hmm.
happen. And I don't remember exactly what the eclipse was in, but I remember transportation being one of those issues.
This year it's in Aries and Libra axis. So that is interesting. Cars, Transportation,
Yeah.
blowing
Um,
up, fire. Was
what
it
was
on
it in the
fire?
what I don't think so. What was it in the spring? Do you remember?
Aries and Libra.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. I don't know if it stays the same for the whole
Mm.
year or what, but it was an Aries and Libra before. Well, actually, you saying that is giving me an indication of something that I just recently heard. So you're saying this happened in the beginning in springtime, right?
Mhm.
And so I work like I have my own suite. So I like see people all the time and like I try to align with spiritual people. That's why like I named it what I named it. And just in the last like 2 months or so, I have a friend. She's an Aries. She's my best friend. And she was really, really, really feeling overworked. And then I have this client and I'm working on her. And she's just telling me how she's just been feeling so overworked. And mind you, my best friend was just telling me this like 24 hours ago. And she said the same sentence that my friend said.
It's
Like
so
it,
weird.
yeah. And then I asked
Yeah.
her, I'm like, oh, like, what's your zodiac sign? Like, if you don't mind me asking. And she's like, I'm an Aries. I can't stop working, but I know I need to. And I was like, oh, so was my best friend. So I wonder if like a lot of like Aries or Aries placements, like from that eclipse or from that time, is like feeling overwhelmed with work, which is interesting because I'm an Aries rising and I've just basically taken on like 3 new endeavors in
Hmm.
this year. So that's really weird that the transmission, and that made me think about those Aries people.
Yeah,
Yep.
that is really strange. And I like, I mean, that's one thing. Like, for example, October 2023, I moved
Hmm.
and I had a lot of other things that happened during that time. I can get into that here in a second. But when I moved, in that stint of like a week or so, I had a friend who was also moving. I had a friend of their friend who was also moving. I had somebody else who were not moving, but they were having like home difficulties, like they were having issues with like plumbing or
Mm.
heating and cooling. Um,
Wow.
and it's just weird to be like I watch astrology, like I watch your channel daily. Well, when you post daily, uh, and you know I watched a couple other ones, so I'm like constantly like in tune with this,
Hmm.
and then like seeing if or how it applies in my life, but then having conversations with people not talking about astrology, but then they're saying the same sentences like you just said. And it's like,
Right.
what is going on?
Hmm.
Like what? Yeah,
Exactly. And
super
that's exactly
strange.
why we started this podcast too.
Yeah,
Like those exact things that happen where like to the T to where people are saying the exact same words. Like I feel like that's when it like gets like really creepy to me. And I'm like,
yeah.
you guys don't know each other. So
And then on top of that, so that same October 2023, I moved. I went through a breakup. My grandmother passed away, and I had a best friend who died, all
wow.
within like a month. And if I look back, uh, it was an 11-year cycle. So 11 years prior, I had a suicide attempt. I lost a best friend
Wow.
to drunk driving, and I went through a breakup. And it was like within, I don't know, 15 days, I want to say, like 2 weeks ish of
Hmm.
the same transit 11
Whoa.
years later, which is like super crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But like it's very cyclical.
Hmm. And this was October, correct?
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. End
Oh,
of
that's
October, like early November, like it's blurry, but it's like
so.
within that time.
In terms of the 11-year cycle, do you feel
Mhm.
like looking back on it now, do you feel like both of those cycles brought you like one of your newest and most evolved expansions?
That's a good question. I think yes, yes, and yeah, yes. I would say yes. But the hesitancy comes with the first time it happened, I didn't have like the tools, the support system,
Mm,
to get through it. So it was like really like I shouldn't have made it. It was really, really,
Right.
really bad. But I did, which
And what do you mean by that?
oh, I should have died. Like I OD'd, like I was comatose in my bed for 5 or 6 days. I lost my job.
Wow.
Like it was like I was like I lost like 60 to 70 pounds. I was like, yeah, just like on the brink of death, like literally. And I made it through, which was crazy. But then recently, the energy was the same. Like it was just so dark and like so
Mm,
much grief and just like so much like that I was working through. And in the second time, I think there was so much more growth because I had the right tools. Like I had a support
right.
system. I had like mental health, like therapy in my background
Mm,
or my tool belt now. And it was, I want to say like, I don't know, like I would see people who had no idea I was going through shit,
right.
like who were like close friends, and which is crazy to me because of like just how heavy everything was.
Hmm.
But like the 11, like prior to that, like you could just look at me and tell that I was like not well.
Right. Wow.
So I think this time around was way better, and there was just more of like an up level in a sense.
Do you feel like that, like 11-year cycle that was brought about by all of those experiences 11 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting enough that that similar experience occurred 11
Yeah.
years later. Were you able in that moment to be like, wait a minute, hold on?
So
Or was it after the fact?
so there was so I had moved into my apartment. I didn't have any furniture yet. And I was like sitting on the floor, and I just remembered being in a similar situation uh like 11 years ago from that
Hmm.
time, and the energy that I felt, just utter depth of like darkness and despair is the only way I can describe it.
Right.
Felt the same. And I was like, holy shit, like I'm back to
But
that
you were
place.
different now.
Yeah. And then I started bawling out of like it sounds weird, but like it was out of like happiness because I knew
Mm,
that I was like gonna be okay because I've been here
right.
before and I had
Hmm.
everything that I needed to like get through it. But it
Yeah.
was like, yeah, it was just so strange. And then that feeling made me like look into like exactly like what were the placements, when did thing like when
Mm.
it happened last time. And
So what were they?
one was the Jupiter transit, a Jupiter transit, and another one was one in Pluto.
Mm.
I
Well,
wonder.
Pluto is death and rebirth.
Yeah, which was very much what both times
Now,
happened for
to
me.
the right, that's why I wanted to clarify that this happened in October, because if that was the case, then Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. So you just got like a double hit
And
of,
my Pluto is in Scorpio.
there you go.
Yeah. Mhm.
So you evolve through endings and new
Yeah.
beginnings.
Yeah. It was very much like an evolution both
Yeah.
times. Yeah,
Hmm.
for sure.
Wow, that's crazy. So that's interesting that you bring up like the October energy,
Hmm.
because from my pattern of um, being observant of what's going on, I always will either end a connection, or it doesn't mean that I ended it. A connection would always end or start in the fall, no matter
Interesting.
what. I would
Yeah.
always be like, all right, yeah, I'm definitely going to meet someone new around this time.
Mhm.
Usually the endings were more platonic people opposed to romantic people. Usually the fall would bring in the romantic person and it would last however long it would. But that's really interesting that you're bringing up that time. And that's the season that I observed as well. Something about fall, autumn
Yeah.
does something.
And I know several people who are going through transitions. Probably not
Hmm.
similar, but like I had some friends get married, which was like I went to a funeral and a wedding on the same day, which was
Wow.
just insane. But
The paradox
Um,
of life right there
yeah, it
that
was,
day.
yeah, yeah, it was like a movie in the worst,
Hmm.
best way.
Right.
Um, but like seeing like them get married and like starting like a new journey in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
So
That's literally Pluto, death and
yeah,
rebirth. So that's
yeah,
so weird that that happened to you on the same day. Oh my God.
yeah. Um, but then like seeing that, like for me, like my best case study when it comes to
Mm,
astrology.
right.
And so like now I'm like, okay, well, what other cycles are happening that I haven't picked up on and there's like 2 year cycles and 4 year
Hmm.
cycles and yeah,
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. And I feel like ones that happen so intensely, when you are aware, which I'm sure that first 11-year cycle, when it started, when you were stayed in the world,
yeah,
you probably had to go through that next 11 years and come to that cycle again to like have that moment like you had where it's like,
yeah,
okay, no, I know I can get through this. I'm stronger now. I've been
yeah,
through dark days. I know how to find the light. And that's like super, super powerful as well, because there are certain people that like that doesn't happen to them and they don't know if they would have found the light in their energy. So that's like really strong story of like, like knowing you and like what you've been through
mm,
and stuff like that. I
yeah,
feel like that's like a really good indication where it will help people understand more about themselves and their experiences. And because you had that awareness, you were able to see like, okay, the similar theme is happening. I am evolved now. And I feel like with stuff like that, like when you get through those types of things, I feel like you are rewarded energetically somehow, some way. So you could just be now in your season of like rewards.
yeah, maybe.
Because
I mean,
Pluto has to give you something back, especially with you mentioned Jupiter as well.
yeah, those were the
Jupiter
two.
will
Yeah,
expand you, but when
yeah.
it expands you, it might expand you away from things that you are
Mhm.
comfortable with.
Well, that's
So,
the other thing too, is like in that process, I like disconnected from a lot of things too that just weren't serving me
right,
anymore, which were, good. Um,
right.
yeah, it's so weird to be in that place and then like no, like I don't know, like going back to like energy, like you've worked
Hmm.
with energy, so I feel like you understand this, is like there's this weird, like I feel like energy has like a sense to it or like a feeling to it.
Right,
And if it's the same, like I'm pretty aware, like it's in the same, I don't know, the same vibration, maybe.
right.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what's the hardest thing is for us as humans, that we're so like in that, well, if I hear it or I see it or I he, see it from someone else, then I believe it without just believing in your own feelings and being like,
Yeah.
well, my gut is telling me this, but I don't know. And actually, one of my spiritual people who saved my life in a way that doesn't connect to what happened to you, more in
Mm-hmm.
a sense of like depression of a chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
He said something to me that really stood out to me in the sense of that we all feel the same type of energies. It's just at what magnitude we feel them on and how much we trust ourselves. And
Yeah.
I didn't understand that when he first was telling me. And he was telling me in the sense of as above, so below, like what we are, we
Mm-hmm.
attract. So if we don't trust our inner feelings, then you're going to attract in people that also kind of probably don't trust themselves.
Yeah.
So it's so weird, like energy like that. And I didn't realize that intuition was so connected to trusting in ourselves. And that's probably like one of the themes that happen with these type of intense experiences, like how you had to just trust yourself that things would get better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird too, because I feel like I had a really unique upbringing where made me or allowed me to be really in tune with my intuition and like trusting how I feel, like at least energetically.
Right.
Um, and I think, like, I hope people, just like whoever's watching this,
Mm-hmm.
take the opportunity to like dive into what that means for them.
Right.
Because I think at some point, like we knew how to do it natively,
Mm-hmm.
and then now society or our culture or whatever doesn't teach it, or it's not
Right.
part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so we like go through the world kind of, I don't know, stumbling or, lost in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel because when I wasn't certain of any of this stuff and I grew up Christian, that's really all I knew. I
Mhm.
go to like whatever we were doing in a sense, but I would never like be paying attention. But I was just that kid who you couldn't get to pay attention to anything. So it wouldn't even matter what it was.
Yeah.
If I didn't have interest in it, I didn't want to pay attention to it. But when I didn't understand why my life was the way it was, like tarot and astrology and like working with energy like just made so much sense. And I'm like, this is the only thing that really makes sense to me right now.
Hmm.
And that's where like I kind of just made it into like my whole life once I understood and was realized that I almost feel like I was like pushed down the spiritual path. I don't feel like I mean, I free willingly walked down it, but I kind of
Hmm.
feel like the door was just like pushed in my face, like, this is where you're headed. You have no other choice, this, that, and the other. And then back to like the astrology, that's when it kind of all like made sense. And I was like, this has got to be real somehow. Like, there's no way all of these planets are surrounding us for no reason, no matter what you believe in. Why are they here? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a point where it just like clicked for you?
I think reading
Astrology?
tarot helped.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like astrology was still, even when I learned how to read tarot, I was like, whoa, I don't get it. I don't know how
Mhm.
these pieces of paper know, but they do.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to roll with it.
Yeah. Tarot's super strange.
And that's what freaked me
Yeah,
out.
as you know. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And I, like you said before, how you actually like dove into tarot before astrology. Like as I was learning tarot, like there was
Yeah.
specific books I would read, and I would pull out the spread, I would read what it means, and in the indication, it would say, like, the sun is ruled by Leo, and the sun is their ruler, and the hanged man is Neptune. Neptune's
Mhm.
Pisces ruler. That's why this is the card that it's ruled by, this, that, and the other. And one of the times, I don't know what I was reading for, but it was like on my channel, I do like new moon readings or full moon readings and whatever the sign is in. And in the Moonology deck, they have all of these cards. And that's when it really connected to me is I think I was doing a reading for, I don't know, like the Capricorn new moon, and they got the Capricorn new moon in the deck. And I was just like, I don't know. Like, how does it know? How does it know that
Yeah.
that's the event that's happening right now? And that's what like freaked me out a little bit. And I got a lot of astrology readings that ended up coming true. Didn't believe they would at first, though. And I know
Yeah.
some
And
people think
it's,
that about mine. So I'm not going to
yeah,
like.
that's so strange. What about, have you seen any like noticeable patterns in your life
Well, definitely the
related to
fall.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay.
fall brings in people, removes people, um, which makes sense because eclipse season is always there
Hmm.
as well. Um, I came into the realization just kind of this year, actually, that my birthday season isn't always like the grandest time that you like, that we made it out to be when we were children. I kind of feel
Hmm.
like a solar return is like a grieving moment.
Hmm.
And I feel like now that
Interesting.
I'm more spiritually inclined and energetically inclined, I almost feel like once I really started to tap into it, like in March, it's usually a hard month for me now. It's usually like all right, what are you going to blossom into now? How are you going to change and evolve and make a move? It's almost like my season brings about like a push to evolve.
Hmm.
And when you aren't sensitive to energy and you don't know anything about anything, like everything has to be perceived, you know? So I was just like living life, having happy birthdays all the time. But always would have this weird tension, like even back in the day,
Hmm.
where it would be like, well, I have to do something, or no, you don't have to do something, or who do I want around, who do I don't want around. And I always felt like a tense energy. And now that like I don't like have like birthday parties like you would when you're like as an adult, I'm starting to observe the energy a little bit more. And I was like, oh, something happens in March. Something goes on to where my energy grieves who I was at 27, 29, 30, whatever.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's the ones I
there.
picked up on.
I think there definitely is like a transitional energy at a certain stage in life, like probably when
Right,
you're younger too, but you don't realize it maybe.
right.
Um, do you have like a birthday astrology ritual or anything?
Well, yes, I would always get my solar return read by my old astrologer who
Hmm.
she was a very straight to the point. She didn't sugarcoat nothing, and that's why I loved her. Although I would read her readings and be like, again, I chose the wrong person, or like, what did I do now? Or like this, that, and the other. Um, but she was always spot on, and she never sugarcoated anything, which I really respected. But some of the things that she would say, like, and I didn't want to believe, I would go throughout the year. And then all of a sudden in like December, I'd be like, oh, that's what she said. And then I would get another solar return reading. So I would always have an astrologer look into my year ahead when I turn a different
Interesting.
age in March. So that's like
Yeah.
my ritual. Um, I don't really like do anything like spiritually. Like I light my candles, I write my manifestations down and stuff like
Hmm.
that. But since I practice them so habitually, when it's my
Yeah,
birthday,
you
it's
don't
just
do anything, yeah,
right. It's
like
just part
extra
of it.
special.
Hmm. Do you do
Um,
anything on your birthday?
so my biggest thing, I just need to like dip myself in water. Like
Oh,
I try to find I live by Great Lakes. So like
hmm.
I'll go up to like Lake Michigan. Has been the ritual the last 4 or 5 years. Um, I grew up in a town with a very large lake, and so just
Mm.
like getting in water is like a reset point, just to like cleanse my energy essentially.
Yep. That's a
Um,
good ritual. You should
yeah, so
start
I just
doing
make
it.
sure I do that. And my birthday's in August, so it's usually pretty hot outside, so it's like not,
Right.
too bad. Um, yeah, and then I just like journal and reflect. But
Right.
I don't do any yearly tarot pulls or anything. I try to
Mm.
anymore, trying to get too lost in astrology and like
Right.
tarot. Like I do
Hmm.
watch it every day, but it's more of like curiosity to see how the world is playing out around me, not so
Right.
much for like what should I do next kind of thing.
Hmm.
But it does help and guide in that way.
Yeah, that's why I read tarot in a very specific way. Like I'll say in the beginning, I'm like, don't make it your reading if it's not, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and
And
that's really important.
yeah. And I try to like just like go more with what the energy is doing. Cause like
Mhm.
anybody could be out there and say, like, yeah, your ex is coming back, but like, okay, and then
Yeah,
what? You know?
yeah.
So I definitely get that because as someone who does tarot, like I don't watch other people's channels. I used
Yeah.
to watch a couple of them, but then I kind of actually was like, I kind of want to be surprised. So I'll watch my
Mhm.
readings like after the fact and then I'll see how it connected to whatever happened. But that's why I am iffy about reading for Pisces um, because I don't want to take what I read for the weekend and then
Mhm.
unconsciously,
Yeah.
because it's me, you
Mhm.
know? But there's been weird times where I've done readings, I was totally out of it, did not have my energy into it at all. And then I would finish the weekend or the day and I would be like, why do I feel like this is so familiar? And then I'll go back and be like, oh, not me reading for myself.
Do you think, or maybe a better question is, at what level does like reading tarot and like looking to astrology, especially like on a day-to-day basis, what
Hmm.
level does that manifest itself like in your life? Or like if what I guess what I'm trying to say is like self-fulfilling prophecy, because this comes up like people who are naysayers with, tarot or astrology.
Right.
If you're looking for something, you're gonna see it.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts with that?
So I feel like in a sense where, like, how do I explain this? I don't pay attention to astrology. I pay
Hmm.
attention to new moons, full moons, like those bigger events. But there
Hmm.
have been times where something would happen to me, or I would see something in a reading, and I'll go and look up the astrology.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, oh, well, there you go. No
Yeah.
wonder why this is coming out so strongly. And because I read so often, I'm able to tell when the energy shifts drastically.
Hmm.
So, Leos are who I read for most often. And like sometimes I'll forget that a new moon is coming up. And then the week before, I'm getting all of these aces and I'm getting all of these like oracle that are talking about doors opening. And then I'll remember, like, oh, okay, wait, hold on. There's a new moon coming up. It's probably just reading off the energy. So that's
Yeah.
where I was able to, because I don't follow astrology like that.
Hmm.
And my subscribers know this because I'm constantly asking them to confirm for me what's going on because my calendars say a couple different things. And I almost feel like for the people that like are like, yeah, that's BS. When something weird happens to you, look up the astrology. Like, for example, a lot of things that have happened with friends always happen around some type of Aquarius transit. That's
Hmm.
because Aquarius rules your community. So, I like to tell people that are like super like, oh, I don't know if that stuff is real to go along with the seasons of life. Like we're in Virgo season. Watch everyone start to care about their diet all of a sudden. Watch everyone start to care about their well-being of their body. And when we move into Scorpio season, watch people probably get down to a low part of their life. A lot of the time Scorpio season brings people down. Like down, down, down.
And that's
Look at
like the fall, or what do they call it? Seasonal depression
yes, that's when
kind
it
of
starts
falls
to
in,
start.
yeah, around the same time,
You'll see in Capricorn season in December, what's everyone doing? Spending their money.
hmm which is so
Yeah.
interesting because that kind of plays into uh this is astrology adjacent, but it plays into like when, and we've talked about this before, maybe
Hmm.
off camera, but when you have like a thought and then somebody else picks it up, like
Yeah.
how much of that is like collective, like
Hmm.
how, I guess what I'm trying to say is if astrology is happening and it's affecting people, and then the collective is also affecting people, like how much of that
Hmm.
is intertwining and like creating these crazy dynamics that are pretty, I don't know, trends that are easy to see, maybe not easy, but
Right. I believe
they're
all of it's
there.
connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it all because I actually say that to people in readings. Like when I see a
Mhm.
lot of ideas coming out, I'll tell them, you're not the only one having these ideas. So
Yeah.
put it into
You gotta move.
right,
Yeah.
move or
Mhm.
don't move. But don't be
Yeah.
mad 2 months later when you see
Yeah.
someone playing out the exact idea that you thought of in that moment. And that's why I like tarot because it's free will. Like I can tell you
Yeah.
what I see in the spread, but you can go and do the total opposite of what the advice portion was and then come back to my channel and be like, "Girl, you were so wrong." And yeah, I am going to be wrong because you went against the energy that I pulled out. So,
Mhm.
yeah, then you don't resonate to it. Automatic
Yeah.
disassociation.
Yeah. I think that's important too, for like if people are listening and they don't know, they
Right.
haven't like followed tarot or astrology, but there is like the aspect of free will.
Mhm.
So if something is happening, like you do, as far as I know, like I do have the choice to sit at home and like do nothing,
Right.
And if that's the case, then like the things that could happen and won't happen
Mm-hmm.
for that week or day or whatever. Or I
Yep.
could choose to go out and like push things forward and yeah.
1,000%. You ever find those times where like you weren't going to go somewhere, but then you decided to go and you're like, oh, yeah, this is why I was supposed to go here.
Yeah, that's actually happened quite a bit the
Mm-hmm.
past like couple of months. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, I feel like that is something where when your awareness is up, you
Mhm.
figure out those things happen so often. Like even
Yeah.
with me and choosing the suite that I decided to go into, like I could have chose any of the other ones, but I chose this one specific room. And there
Mhm.
is like a witchy girl in that hallway as well. And we started to like connect. Like I'm not like a witchy indicational person. I feel like I'm more like a white wizard, like Gandalf. But anyways, so when I was talking to her, she basically rebranded her whole room and made it like all Halloweeny, like much more to her personality. And I was like, oh, it looks great in here. And she was like, yeah, um, I just cleansed the space, like whatever. She was like, just make sure like none of them ran into your room because that's where the portal is. And I was like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? She's like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a portal in your suite. And I was like, I
Mhm.
knew there was something in there because I chose it and I didn't know why I chose it. And it was just like a
That's a
really
real,
weird experience.
we should
Yeah.
have a whole discussion about portals.
Yeah. We definitely will in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a whole yeah, experience with that multiple.
Back to astrology. I'm going to guess what Andrew's Mercury sign is because Mercury is the way that we communicate. So as I was saying before in like our seasons and how I help people pay attention to like what the seasons are, like when we were in Virgo season and Aquarius season. So like my Mercury is in Aquarius. And when I tell you I can talk to anybody about anything forever and almost in like an ADHD type of conversation, which you may have picked up on already, like, I'm going to talk about this topic. I'm going to talk about this topic. Fasten your seatbelt, hold on tight because we are going to explore all the topics in 30 minutes. Like, that's just like the way I communicate. And when I realized I had a Mercury in Aquarius, who are the energies that are outside of the box and rebellious as well, which I kind of rebel through communication a little bit sometimes too. But I only do it because I want to see what the other person's going to say. But I want to guess what yours is because now that we have already recorded about like 3 episodes now
Mhm.
and understanding our dynamic and communication, I'm going to go with you definitely have. Mind you, we have not talked about this. I told him not to tell me.
I don't
You
think you're
def-
gonna get it.
I feel like okay, well you could give me a yes or no and if
Yeah,
it's
well,
not earth, then I'll choose a different element.
it
But
is
is it an earth? Is your
no,
Mercury an earth
it is
sign?
not.
Okay. So then I'm going to go with, I don't want to say air. There's no way it's air because then we would be talking over each other constantly if it was an air. But we are very different in the way that we communicate.
We're like
So,
polar opposites, I feel like.
right. An
Yeah, yeah.
Aquarius sister sign is Leo. So I'm going to go with either Leo or maybe a water sign. But
It's
Aries
Leo.
would be too hard. Yes.
It is Leo. That's
Wow. So there
actually
you
impressive.
go. Another one of our case studies. So there you go. That's what made me think about it.
Sorry,
I'm like,
I'm
okay,
I'm reading what it says here now, just because I'm curious.
okay, what does it say? Tell us.
Um, and hold on, I don't want to read the whole thing because it's kind of like lengthy. So I'm gonna spark note it. Intellect is persuasive, idealistic, and bold. Natural leader, sure. Articulate, creativity and warmth to win others. You may come off as overbearing or conceited. I've had that
I
happen a
don't get
lot.
that. Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And it's not
how?
like I don't know. I don't
Oh,
know.
like you've had people say those words to you?
Yeah. Well, not
Oh, like
maybe
a
verbatim.
know-it-all, like
Yeah,
a
the
know-it-all
know-it-all.
energy.
That's the
Okay,
one that I
yeah.
get all
I
the
get
time,
that
which
sometimes
is
too, though.
yeah, it's not intentional or anything, but yeah.
Hmm. Well, that's interesting because that would make so much sense because I think on the last episode or the one before that, when we were talking about like how different we are, and then decide to guess what your Mercury is, and that would make sense as to why your Mercury is the sister sign of mine, and vice versa. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's very workable, but also interesting because polar opposite.
Yeah. Which is, it's
Okay, well then
exactly
what is
what,
your Mars in? There's something that's in Earth that's not just your moon and rising.
well, I will tell you. I don't know.
Mars is how we take action.
What do you think it's in? Would you be
Mm,
apt to guess this?
I kind of want to stay with Earth for some reason.
My Mars is in Gemini.
What?
Yep.
Okay, so do you feel okay, then that could not be personality trait per se towards like how you come across towards like me in this type of
Mhm.
setting, but a Mars and Gemini would give me that you can multitask like never before.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
If you had 8 hands, you would use all eight.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
well, I also, so we have this podcast. I have
Hmm.
I have two other businesses. I have a YouTube channel, and I just do it very effortlessly. Like I'm
Right.
really good at like doing lots of things at once. So yeah.
And Geminis are really smart. They have like that intellectual,
Mm.
um, like I feel like their intellect is slightly like cut from a different cloth type
Mm.
of way, if that makes sense. So that kind of makes sense as to why you would come off as a know-it-all if your
Yeah.
Mercury's in Leo and your Mars is in Gemini, and that's how
Mhm.
you're executing your energy. It's like people think you're not only smarter than them, but better than them.
Yeah.
But you don't probably do that on purpose. But I
No,
get that
and
sometimes
that,
too.
yeah, that's just the problem is I don't like inherently I don't think I'm better than anybody. Like I think we're all the same. Like
Right, me too.
fundamentally. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but when somebody's mad at you and they think you think whatever, you can't, like it doesn't help to say that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Well, this is what we have of our astrology talks. And if you want to tell us what your chart or astrology looks like in the comments below that connected to anything that we said, we would love to hear and let us know. And you could also find our website in the description box down below if you want to request to be on the show and tell us your story. Is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah. Our next episode probably will be dream related, maybe
Yes.
portal related, but
Hmm.
dreams for sure. And that's it. Thank you all for listening. See y'all next time.
Bye.